It's been a long time since you and I spoke about Tottenham, so I was pondering what was the best way of us kicking off these shows, these dialogues, these looks at the way the club is operating and the characters involved, and God forbid we go down the path of like a Martin Cloak type character when he's writing these dreadful 5,000 word pieces where we sort of start from where the bail money went. So let's just jump into where we are now with a little bit of a nod to the past, and we can reference stuff that's gone on as and when it's relevant. A lot of the stuff that I foretold, and that's not me trying to infer that I'm, Puxatawny Pete or the seer of seers, rather that I, like a lot of other people who have subsequently come out of the woodwork, were capable of ignoring the cult of Levy and the weirdness that was at one stage really rife throughout the fan base, where people couldn't differentiate between supporting the club and not being impressed with the way the club was being run by the owners, by the custodians, by the people that have the branding rights. And for a long time, there was this sort of clash of like, oh, you're a gooner. You know, the stadium's amazing. The training pitches, world class. As if these were tangible things that, anybody had asked for. White Hart Lane's a perfectly fine stadium, and Hotspur Way, I mean, the idea that that's world class, sure, of course it is. It's like it's come from another planet. But, quite mediocre, quite modest clubs have decent training facilities. Prior to Hotspur Way, we weren't playing on an unploughed field with a big old, with a lamb's head. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like these people pulled us from poverty. What they did do, and this is the crucial thing that underlines everything about ENIC, is that they spent our money. Not a bean from their own pockets. And I would challenge anybody who wishes to argue that to do so convincingly and to bring with them at least 2 or 3 wheelbarrows full of paperwork that'll prove that I'm wrong, because I'm not wrong, and you won't be able to do it. So Pochettino's demise was inevitable, and I think that is not up for debate. We saw the sort of hopes and dreams, the trajectory, and then everything just floundered. And it floundered because we didn't get the churn. Let's be clear on that. There's no bad luck. There's no dinosaurs arrived from another planet and spoiled everything. The squad was left to fester, and it was treated abysmally because Levy was too busy sniffing lifts or whatever the hell he was doing involved in his big shopping centre project. And Pochettino, God bless him, history's going to remember him as a trier, as somewhat of a miracle worker, but ultimately not a winner. And if you think that he hasn't taken up a new position and that's strange, if you think it isn't strange, then I really have to question how your mind works, because a top-class manager, and I think Poch could be a top-class manager, he's not that far away from it, but I think he's seen as somebody who isn't quite sound, which sounds a bit yes-ministerish, but I think he's seen as being somebody who's a bit naive, and this we'll come back to very, very quickly. Was this all of his own making? Of course not. His employers were an investment company, and their priority then was, as it is now, was not to fulfil the wishes and dreams of or ambitions of the coaches, because that was a path that would too easily lead towards bankruptcy, which is ironic given where we are right now. And I'm going to keep referring to the debt because the debt scares the living bejesus out of me. And the last estimate, which is pre-COVID, okay, so note pre-COVID, was that there was still going to be debt kicking around in 2050. So it's huge. This is a generational undertaking. So Pochettino's demise and the lack of investment and the lack of churn into the personnel within the squad, it was Guillaume Ballack that pointed out to us that in back-to-back windows during Poch's reign, that Spurs were the only side in any of Europe's top 5 leagues that didn't spend a penny. And some of you at the time thought this was normal. Some of you thought this was acceptable, that this was, in fact, admirable. Because, Tottenham don't buy success. We're not like those nasty people down the road and the people up the way. We knit our own players. We have a window box and we plant little seeds and we sprinkle them with water and outgrow 20, 30, 40 million pound players. Do you remember when he said that to NASDAQ? But the thing is, how do we remember Maurizio? Do we remember him as a patsy? Yeah, we do remember as a patsy. Because the endless very happy, when nobody in their right mind was very happy with the squad. He was being professional in the press conferences, which is super cool, and you win points for that. But at the same token, you don't want to be going down the route whereby you're being so professional that you're actually doing an impersonation of that Chemical Alley guy from the Gulf War. You know, there's no tanks here, the Americans are miles away, and they're in the background. It's like the David Lammy thing. There's no police around here. I don't see any police. But worse for Poch is now the arrival of Jose Mourinho. And this colossus it's like the casting out of moneylenders. He's tipped everything upside down. And I don't know if it was his first or his second presser, but the Portuguese said out loud that which had been previously unspoken at Spurs. And it was always a bit of a jibe. We had Sir Alex Ferguson, Levy's different. And the business about net spend, again, something that was bizarrely lauded by some fans as something to be proud of. The prudence. You have to admire the prudence. Well, the team's going down the table, and the best manager we've had since Keith Birkinshaw is going home and crying every night when he goes home. But Mourinho turned around and said, in respect of transfers, that Tottenham don't operate like other clubs. They don't operate like that at all. And this was the first time that this was said by a manager. And again, some of you, not all of you, but some of you, many of you, heralded the arrival of Jose with, this will be a disaster. This has got catastrophe written through it like a stick of rock. The first time, Jose says, Daniel, go and get me that £90 million boy from Inter or whatever. There's going to be a huge bust-up and it'll all end in tears. And as I pointed out at the time we took him on in defence of these stupid, spurious comments, was the fact that these are grown men. And Levy, for love him or hate him, he took weeks, perhaps a month or so, to strike up a deal with Mourinho, and they would have discussed all this. So what do you think they were talking about? How he wanted his office done out. This was all fixed. So Mourinho arrives and immediately says, there isn't tons of money, boys. There isn't tons of money. So we're going to be careful, and and then the COVID thing blew up. So, and this is the damning bit, bear with me. This is the damning bit, the worst of all. the worst element of all of Pochettino's legacy has now occurred since he's gone. Because Mourinho comes in, and against a backdrop of working for fundamentally a parasite, he's now got this other backdrop of a pandemic. And the debts are there. So there's the debt, there's the pandemic, there's the parasites, there's this triple threat of pain that he's walked into from sitting casually on his swivel chair for Sky Sports, chatting about this, that, and the other. He's now walked back into this job, and he thinks, "Oh, this. I know the game here. I know the game. I know how to work with Levy. I'm sure I can do it. I'll take this up, no problem at all. I'm a winner. I'm the special one." And he's got this triple threat of a global pandemic which has just destroyed the game. It's costing Tottenham Hotspur £3 million every match day. It's money that was already written in the forecast to take every match day, selling food, drink, merchandise, whatever you could squeeze out of you as you're dancing to some awful band in the airport thing space, whatever it's called. So he walks into this. And so you could argue that it was well, you not argue, but you'd say it was a far more awful situation than Pochettino had to contend with, which was just a distracted parasite who wanted to get the shopping centre up and done, and was pouring all of his time and all of his money into achieving his ultimate aim. But instead of Mourinho sitting there going, "Oh, I'm very happy," and all this nonsense, this guy has still managed to embark upon a shopping spree. Because what he's done, and it's not complicated, he's just lowered his sights. And so now we see that Poch was a patsy, a miracle worker, and a man with no vision. Why wasn't Pochettino out identifying players that were cheap? And if you look at the players we've taken in, they're all predominantly Jose Mourinho targets. This is so obvious, it's staring us in the face. Matt Doherty, 28 years of age. That's too old. There's no investment there, there's no punt there. Højbjerg, 25, far too old. Joe Hart, 33. Now, Hugo Lloris is 33. He's a goalkeeper. It's not a problem. But what I'm saying to you is that these are not Levy punts because they're too old and they're not French adolescents. Oh, and Bale, of course, is 31. On the pair from Madrid, by the way, I'm given to understand these are not Mourinho moves. I'm not saying that Levy pushed them through and to hell with everybody, or that Mourinho is going to be biting his tongue every time he sees Gareth Bale's chirpy little face in training. But these were deals that were once in a lifetime, or this deal was a once in a lifetime thing for Tottenham to bring back, but the commercial value just immense. And as a player, I don't think there's any problems there. Yes, he's been injured, but if we play him like a player who's been injured opposed to build a team around him, then I don't foresee any colossal problems. I'd be surprised if it's a disaster. But the reason Mourinho wasn't threw his arms up in the air when the deal was mooted is because it sucks so much of the salary out of his squad. And that is a potential problem. Back to the now. And we're talking about a coach that's getting on with it and not just talking about it. So no philosophy, no building, no bury this, bury that. Just making changes in order to afford and affect change. No more kowtowing to the instructions. Top four, mustn't finish seventh. This is a coach that wants to win anything he can get a sniff of winning. And I think that Mourinho knows that his squad as it is a million miles away from the likes of Liverpool and Manchester City. But he could nick a trophy and still finish high enough up the table that the share of the broadcasting monies is acceptable. The real problem for Jose Mourinho is affecting change when it comes to the mentality of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. And this is something we occasionally touch on blogs and on social media and on forums and stuff. And there's always this thing about lads, it's only Tottenham, the Roy Keane thing, and how Spurs are always seen as a bit weak, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. When the reality is, the way the club has been steered, and this is a conversation I've had with you on the blog, and I spout all the time because it's true, and you can't argue with it because it's right, is that the culture of any business, football club, sweet shop, whatever, comes from the top and it trickles down. So the face of the business, the ethics, everything, that the intrinsic substance of a business doesn't come from the guys in the loading bay. It comes from the boardroom. And unfortunately for us, we have a particularly anal bunch of people running the club. And what's been facilitated, and I don't think it's by design, I think it's just because of the way things have panned out, is that we have a lot of players, we've got a history of a lot of players in the last 20 years that have been weak, that have been effeminate, that have been essentially losers. And you can say, oh yeah, but what about so-and-so? That's got to go. All of this backlash, all of this defence of what Levy has done, and it's stuff he's done, it's not what he's achieved, incidentally. We need to be really, really strong on this. Because it's anything he's achieved, he's bought, and it was our money. So, the guy's added no value at all. But it's getting rid of this loser mentality, and it's being a perennial loser, and that somehow being a loser is acceptable if you mumble something about, gosh, better luck next term, hey? Next season, blah, 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 blah. Threatening to maybe lose less is not an answer, is not a solution. And we are knee-deep in a loser mentality. And that came out after the Champions League final. That came out after the Ajax game. So we lost, but it was actually brilliant. Doesn't make any sense. So it's about changing the mentality, and this is what Mourinho is after doing. And it's a mentality that says Lucas Moura is worth his weight in blood diamonds. The mentality that says next year will be our year because we're good little Boy Scouts. And if we polish our woggles hard enough, hopefully someday we'll sell some cookies to somebody before we all die, probably. And these are the inherent flaws in our fan base. And I think it's a fan base that's been manipulated by latecomers, millennials, and people who have for so long had to cope with not winning, that explaining, trying to pass off losing as not being all that bad, and it's crept into the psyche. And so if you look at the players that Jose's brought in, now I don't know if any of you have been watching the football with the sound off. Now, I only watched it, my gut instinct was I want to hear, the EA Sports noises. But it was one of the Europa games, I think it was in Macedonia, and there was no sound. There was one feed, and that was it. And I couldn't believe what a fantastic insight you got. Joe Hart was on turbo from the first minute to the last, which really puts Hugo Lloris into perspective. And Jose hectoring, not bullying, but hectoring, and constant open channel of communication, shouting at various players, well done, Dele Alli, get back, Dele Alli, all this stuff. And I just thought to myself, wow, these guys really are needing a lot of instruction. And I think he's bringing in guys. You look, Matt Doherty's 28. That's a player who's not a super duper 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 star, but he's a decent Irish international, a rock solid Premier League player. And there's no nonsense there. The guy wants to win. Højbjerg, like I've joked on the blog, his part-time hobbies include, working for various terrorist organisations. The guy scares the life out of me. And he's bringing in people that have got that mentality, the winning mentality. And with Bale, the first thing he spoke about was winning. No surprise then that the first to bite the get a grip of yourself bullet fired from Jose Mourinho has been Dele Alli, a player so overhyped, overrated and underperforming I cannot recall since Tommy Huddleston. And that was an opinion I held that wasn't very popular, because a glimpse of half magic twice a season was enough to feed some of you. And the reality was that Dele shares the same malaise as Tommy did, was that he was always, insert half a dozen excuses here, away from being world class. And we now hit a point where Dele's 24, and in breaking news, next time round he'll be 25. He's not going to play forever, and he still hasn't got his act together. Talks ongoing with PSG. I think that Dele would be foolish enough to try and cling on by his little fingertips, his little finger trick tips, to Tottenham in the hope that there's a way back for him. I don't think he understands the gravity of the situation, and I don't think he understands that this could be the most important season of his career. If I was him, I'd take a small wage cut, whatever's required, and move. I hope he's a massive success. I hope he proves me wrong, because the world is a better place when there's more brilliant footballers in it. And right now, he is not brilliant. So we come to a point where we have a manager who is effecting meaningful change with the transfer activity that's underway. It's brought in a bunch of experienced senior players on a budget that fits. And it created a little bit of a sort of frisson, a bit of an atmosphere on the day or two after it came out. But I really felt that a lot of people didn't take to heart the business of the leaked video clip where Jose addressed everybody. Because when Mourinho told the boys that they had to stop being nice boys and start to become cunts, this, I can't tell you, my heart leapt, because Spurs have been looking, in my opinion, for a sergeant major, for somebody to put the fear of God into them, as well as put an arm round them, since Birkinshaw. The future is as bright as Levy will allow it to be. Never lose sight of that. That's enough for now. I'll speak again soon. Keep it on.
Fuck off.